Well, let's transition here. And if you have questions, you can feel free to jump in and ask as we go. Post them in the chat. We'll keep watching on that. We'll be posting some links and some quotes as well in the chat. So you want to make sure that you keep going with that. But let's transition now. And I want to introduce to you, if you don't know her already, Jess Berryhill from Pleasant Church, where she is, and she said this is a made-up title, so take it for whatever you want, the Student Ministry Director and the Special Needs Ministry Coordinator. So, Jess, why don't you just take a minute, and for those of you that don't know you, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us just a teeny bit about Mount Pleasant Church and what you do there, and then we'll jump into some of the conversation about connecting your disability community to your disability ministry.
Sweet. Thanks, Ryan. My name's Jess, and I am a youth pastor, but I sort of fell into disability ministry probably 6 or 7 years ago when we had a student come through our ministry and felt like we weren't really doing a very good job of meeting the needs of that he had. So that's what we did. That's kind of how it all got started. I also work at Chick-fil-A, sometimes as the cow. So I'm 6 foot. You can't really tell right now, but I'm 6 foot. And so in the cow suit, I'm about 9 feet tall. So it's fantastic. Trying to think. Since starting our disability ministry, we started a house where young adults with disabilities and college students live together kind of in community. And so I live there with them. It's the best Jesus frat / sorority house you've ever been part of. So it's a really fun place to live and definitely keeps me on my toes. So I'm not married, obviously, because I wouldn't be able to do that. It's just been a really crazy adventure, like just really good stuff. So unexpected, all the things. None of that was part of my 5-year plan, including being the cow at Chick-fil-A. So, so that's kind of a little bit about me. My church is small-ish, about 400 people. So not a huge church, but we're pretty much one of the only churches in our town who is doing disability ministry. So we've that's kind of become part of who we are. So that's been really cool. That's pretty much it. So I also do student ministry as well. So that's, I work with teenagers too. So it's it's a lot, but it's good stuff. So
Jess's story and her ministry is really unique and amazing. And she mentioned Friendship House a little bit there, and I know we'll talk about that a bit. But Jess has written a few blogs for us, and just encourage you to check some of those out. Maybe Jason will throw some of the blog links in the chat here so people can have those, because in the limited amount of time, she won't be able to talk about everything that she's done in ministry. I'd love to know more about the Chick-fil-A cow. A side note, I have also been the Chick-fil-A cow.
Hey.
So there are a few. And the suit that I wore, fans didn't work in them. So it was like crazy hot. So, but we're talking today specifically, and again, you could talk on just a plethora of topics, but today specifically, we're hitting on how we can connect our disability ministry to our disability community. So, Jess, I'm wondering if you could just talk to us maybe a little bit about the first kind of steps in reaching out. What does that look like, and what can you recommend for other churches that are interested in connecting with their community?
Yeah. So we started this kind of reaching out into our community about 2 years ago. And the first thing we started doing was just starting to listen to people. And so what we did was we made a really big list of people we wanted to sit down and have a conversation with. And those people were diverse. So we listened to our friends with disabilities because we believe that they drive the ship on what we should do and how we vision cast. And so we sat down and we listened to them. We sat down and we listened to people who were involved in the disability community in our town. So whether that's organizations who serve our friends, whether that's Special Olympics or anyone who had a stake in the game. We tried to sit down and listen to them. And then we also talked to people who weren't part of the disability community. We talked to other faith communities. So we went to a local Jewish congregation and we said, hey, like, what gaps do you see in our town? Because we believe that the disability community powers that ship. If our friends with disabilities are driving the ship, then those organizations around them power the ship. But our town and the people in our town influence the current. And so it's kind of this idea of if we get enough people around the table to ask the most important question of like, what does our town do well? What gaps are there for the disability community? And what dreams do you have for our town? I mean, like, and for the disability community. If we ask those questions, then we're going to get a whole lot of data from all those people. And so that was our first step. And we had some ideas going in, like we thought, we know what the gaps are, like employment, transportation. And yes, all of those things came out, but there were some incredible things that we didn't know that came out as well. And some of those are specific to Terre Haute, but some of those are maybe wider issues that disability communities face. But it was incredible. And the best part about sitting down with these people is that we made new friends. And that's the best part. Like, yes, the listening and the data, that was awesome. But to sit down and have conversations and end up being friends with some of the people that we listen to. What an incredible way to just start making bridges. And so, yeah, we kind of sat down and pretended like we weren't experts. We said, we really haven't been doing this very long. Sometimes we don't even really know what we're doing. But we want to know. We want to know what the gaps are. And so that's kind of what we did. And it was an incredible journey that provided so much fruit. And our church is different because of that listening journey.
I absolutely love that. And I think as we, as ministry leaders, I think so many times we feel pressure to have the answers, and we feel pressure to create the perfect program. We feel pressure to be the field of dreams, type ministry. We build it and we expect them to come, but you've kind of done all the opposite. You've taken the pressure off and just said, tell us what we need to know. And I absolutely love that. Just, I want you to repeat those questions that you asked to your community again. So Jason can throw those in the chat so everybody can have those. So just go ahead and repeat those. I think you had like 3 different questions.
So what does our community do well? And that can be in general. Like, it's good to acknowledge the strengths before you talk about the gaps, because our communities do some really incredible things. Then we ask, what gaps exist in the disability community? And what dreams do you have for our community and the disability community? So we kind of asked different questions depending on the people we were talking to. So if it was just general people outside of the disability community, we may ask a question like, what do you know about the disability community? Because that's super important, because that shows what are the perceptions in our town about the disability community. So I think you're going to get a listening guide that has all the questions that we would typically ask, and also a way to kind of brainstorm organizations and people that you should be listening to.
That's great. That's great. And just, I think sometimes just having the questions, knowing what questions to ask is just such a powerful tool. Just to be able to walk out, when you're brave enough to walk outside the walls of your church and just ask and listen is a really powerful thing. You mentioned one of the benefits or things that came out of those questions to your community was just friendships that were built. I'm wondering if there are other benefits or things that you gained from that listening process specific to your community, because in a second we're going to shift gears and talk about how we can listen to our congregations, because those aren't always necessarily the same thing. So any other benefits that you found from listening to your congregation other than just built friendships?
Yeah, so we were listening for just to see what the gaps were. And so what it did is it sort of opened my heart up to having kind of bold conversations anyway. So I was at an event where we were pitching for fundraising money, which is awkward anyway for me. And I met a guy who runs the bike park, our local bike park. And he said, so I had explained our ministry and he had heard the pitch and he was pitching too, and we both lost. And so, he chatted with me afterwards and he said, hey, like we would love to have your people out. And I said, well, hey, your bike park's not accessible. I didn't say it quite like that, but I said, I would love to do that, but I'm not going to bring all my friends out if all my friends can't participate. And so we started having conversation and we said, what would it take to get some accessible wheelchairs out at your bike park so our families could visit that and could hike and could do some things? And I'm not joking, like within 2 weeks, we had found a donor. We had been able to kind of just navigate this and they were working on an accessible trail, but they had no way to make it truly accessible for our friends. And so out of our willingness to just listen, we were able to address issues that were unrelated to what we had in our mind and really just become an advocate for our friends. So that was one of the really cool things that came out of it. We have been able to just develop partnerships better because we started with listening. We had some partnerships. This was pretty early on in our ministry. So this was like, we started this kind of about 4 years in. So we had some partnerships, but this really helped us to kind of say, like, we promise we're here for the long haul and we're all in. Like, we want to be a part of this. And we know that you have already been doing incredible work in our community. And we want to acknowledge that and affirm that and see you in that. And so I think that was huge for us. I think it created an environment where we can just really have friends in the community where we can reach out and serve our families in the best possible way.
I love that. Being there for the long haul, listening, being an advocate. So many doors open when you're willing to open your own door and walk out of it and ask. And you're right. I witness of this myself at First Christian when we became involved in our community. I didn't have the slightest idea of how to fundraise and build a baseball field, but that's what our community said they needed. And, we raised $50,000 in less than 12 months, had the money on hand and built the baseball field for our community. So it's doable and people will get behind an effort that will benefit your community. And it's exciting to see that happen across lots of different communities like your own. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked about connecting in your community and listening in your community. Talk to us about doing that within your congregation because the populations aren't always the same. And sometimes you need to, build the bridge between the two. So how do you connect in your congregation and listen in your congregation? Talk to us.
Yeah. So congregational listening is equally as important, obviously, because they're going to be they're cheerleaders, whether they know it or not yet. They need to be on board. And I think we can go out into the community and ask, what are the issues? What are the gaps? What are the things? But if we don't have our congregation there saying, okay, like, yes, we're willing to jump on board. We're willing to get behind that idea. And so we started asking questions about what gifts does our congregation have specifically? What makes our congregation unique? What are some of the talents and resources that we have? And not just like financial resources, but like building resources or land resources or equipment resources. Those things are super important too. And we asked, what's a moment that you can identify where you were really proud of something that we did as a congregation? And you can kind of, if you ask that question, you can kind of see patterns on what really like pulls people in, what drives their desire to serve. And if you can get that data, all of that data, and then take the data that you got from the community, and if you can merge those together And if you can fill a gap with the talents and skills that your congregation for sure has, it just sets your ministry or whatever outreach you're doing up for success. And so from our listening, we learned that our congregation, they love what we're doing as a disability ministry, but sometimes they're not super involved. And maybe you have that too. And that's great. And I'm so glad that they love us and they're proud of us. But we want them to really be a part of what we're doing. And so we felt like, okay, like maybe whatever project or outreach or ministry we're doing needs to have a really easy jump off point. Like it needs to be something where the buy-in isn't huge, but it's still effective and kind of addressing that gap. And so that's the project we looked for. But we also noticed that our students were driving a lot of the push for our disability ministry. And so we also thought, man, maybe that's it too. Like, so we took all this data and kind of developed something out of what we learned. And there's obviously been road bumps and all the things, but that process set us up for success in a way that I felt like I have never experienced in ministry. Just because we did the work beforehand. Sometimes I think, especially like early on, I literally didn't know what I was doing. So we were just kind of making it up. We were just like, yeah, that sounds like a great plan. Like, and we all do that, right? But to have something that's more strategic is huge. And we've seen the fruit of that. So, yeah.
That's cool. So through the process of listening to your community and through the process of listening to your congregation, asking similar questions, some different questions, you're able to pull together some common themes. And I believe that's kind of the process that the Holy Spirit uses to enlighten us, to show us, where He's already at work. Because oftentimes we can have great plans, but they may not be God's plans. And oftentimes God goes before us and is already working before us. And it's a matter of us kind of catching up and seeing some of those common themes. So I'm wondering, Justin, if you can give us some real practical examples about how this played out for you at Mount Pleasant Church. Give us some of those things that kind of rose to the top that God revealed where He was at work and kind of how you engaged. And just talk to us briefly about some practical examples of how that played out for you.
Yeah. So we learned that our congregation, like I said, needed an easy jumping off point, but we're really good at community, and we're really good at like kind of showing up in community. And we found out obviously some of the gaps that exist. And I know these are gaps that probably exist in your community as well. Transportation was a huge one. Housing was a huge one. We also learned that summertime is hard. But the comment that stuck out in our interviews was this from a partner. They said, if you and I wanted to have a girls' night or a guys' night or whatever, or just hang out as friends, then we could do that. But for a lot of our friends, that's not an option. And so from that comment, and we know that, but to hear someone say that in just a conversation, it kind of wrecked me in a way. Because I thought, man, that's what we're about. The church is about community, and are we missing the boat because of this? And so we changed some things because of that comment. We changed the way we do respite nights. So for our ministry, it's mainly preteen and up. So we were doing respite nights for a while, and it was good. But after that comment, we really felt like it needs to look different. And so we changed it to home groups. So before COVID, every month we would gather in a home and have dinner together. Because another comment that we heard was that our friends don't get invited over to people's houses. And so not only are we now doing respite still, but we're hitting all of those other things because we were able to listen to the gaps. So it changed our programming in some ways. But then also out of this, we developed Friendship House, which is like I said, a housing opportunity for young adults with disabilities and college students to live in community. So it's not only tapping, that's a pretty easy buy-in for our church. So we invite them over to dinner. Easy sell for them. But also it brings in our college students who have grown up in my ministry and who are now doing incredible work here at the house, just living in community. And one thing we didn't expect was that our house would become a light to our neighborhood. So that's been not only is our church members seeing our friends with disabilities serve in impactful ways at church. They're seeing them live in community, but they're also seeing them make a difference in our neighborhood. And so I'm telling you, like, I couldn't have pictured like what this would end up looking like or the impact that would have, but it's changing what we're doing in the face of what we're doing each and every day. Makes us more aware. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just really cool stuff.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And I love how the process of listening led to things that you could have never come up with on your own. There's no perfect strategic plan you could have devised in your office by yourself. But it was all revealed to you through the process of listening. We have a question in the chat. I'll get to that in just a second, I promise. But I want to show a couple pictures that you shared with me, Jess, and then I want you to talk maybe briefly about each of these pictures, because I think I love what you're sharing. It's a whole nother thing, I think, sometimes just to see faces. So let me see, do a screen share. All right. Can everybody see this picture here?
So this is, they're my two roommates. So that's Taylor on your left and Noel on your right. And they're delivering lunches at the start of COVID. So we, as a ministry, delivered lunches to our students in our community with disabilities. So they did that, and it was a great way to kind of serve. So that's just one way that they're serving intentionally. So there's really great moments, and really just kind of super proud of who they're becoming and how it's kind of changing who they are each and every day. So,
and that's cool. And again, it's reacting to a need that you see, because exactly. You're listening. So, which is cool. Whoops, that's the wrong direction. All right, so let's go this way. All right, talk to us about this picture here.
Yeah, so those are all the residents who live at the house currently. So we have 4 guys and 4 girls. So 3 of those students grew up in my ministry. So 2 of them since they were in 6th grade. 2 of my college students. So what an incredible way to see them like dig in and grow. And like, there's really nothing that makes me prouder than to see like them living intentionally, and to see them having hard conversations, because we have a lot of hard conversations here at Friendship House, and a lot of good conversations too. And so we have 3 friend residents who are doing incredible things, who would have been at home, like who really there was no launch pad for independence. There's not one here in Terre Haute. We know the 21 cliff, 21 happens and things kind of drop off. And so to see them get jobs, to grow exponentially in their independent living skills. And the goal is for them to live independently at some point. So, yeah. So
that's
it's
very cool.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. One more picture.
Yeah. This is one of my favorites. Noelle obviously relied on her mom for transportation, but when she moved in, we said, okay, like it's time to get your bus pass. And so she's been riding the bus to Chick-fil-A every day when she goes to work. And Myron, one of our other roommates, is doing the same. And so it's like big wins and it's little wins, and we get to be a part of that. And I would have never imagined that this would be my life at 34. Like if I were to, flash back to college and say, hey, like at 34, I'm going to be doing this. This would have never been on my radar at all. But Ryan's exactly right. That's what God does when he moves, and he allows you to kind of work within his plan and his guidance. So,
yeah, absolutely love that. I absolutely love how Jess has been able to connect her church congregation, her disability ministry, her youth group to her disability community. And all through the process of just walking out the door and asking simple questions, listening, finding common themes, connecting the dots. I also love the fact that she has, through the various ministry things that have developed, offered multiple on-ramps. I hope that you guys have caught that when she was talking. She appreciates the people who are cheerleaders for her ministry, and a lot of times there are a lot of people that's all the more they'll ever be. But you know what? We all need cheerleaders for our ministry, even if they're not actively involved. So I hope you're able to see how many different levels of involvement there are for the church. Whether you're actually doing hands-on ministry with people affected by disability, or whether you're a cheerleader, or whether you're prayer support, or whether you're financial support. There's so many different ways to get people involved. And I love, Jess, how you've done that. I want to transition a little bit because of time here and start opening up the question and answers with you, because after seeing that and hearing some of the things that you've done, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of different questions for you. So the first question that popped up here in our chat is Friendship House a Waiver group home? So if you could speak to that and just kind of talk to us maybe about funding and how that works.
Yeah, so Friendship House is not a Waiver site. It is entirely like roommates living together. Obviously there's an application process on all the ends to kind of vet to see who is a good fit for Friendship House. But everyone pays rent and it's pretty affordable. So we charge like $300 and that includes utilities. So we tried to keep it as super affordable as possible for everyone. And we felt like our college students aren't paid to be here, but they want to be here. When they have decided that this is a really cool adventure and that we get to do this together. And it changes the dynamic. We also view this house as not our house and not the college student's house, but as our friend resident's house. They just let us live here. But it changes the power narrative in terms of like, it puts them in the driver's seat. They're going to be here long after a lot of our college students will be here. So, so it gives them a sense of ownership. It's not quite a Waiver site, but try to make it affordable and so.
Cool. Very cool. What other questions do we have for Jess? Maybe about the process of listening, questions to ask, specific questions about unique things that she does, whether it has to do with Friendship House. What other questions do you guys have for her? As you're thinking about questions, Chris, are you jumping in?
Yeah,
all right,
I should warn you. I'm a parent liaison at About Special Kids. So I hear this and I'm like, wow, I've never heard of it. So, because we talk to families all over the state and I'm just curious, like, how many people live in the home? Is there somebody, I know it's not Waiver, but do you have college students there all of the time that there's, safety and...
Yeah. So that's one of the criteria is that our friend residents are able to be here by themselves.
Okay.
So that's one of the benchmarks in our interviews. So obviously we all have our own schedules. Like I'm youth pastor / Chick-fil-A cow / all the things. And so I'm here often, but not all the time. And, but there's 8 of us who live here. So the chance of, them being alone is pretty slim for the most part. And now obviously if we're all going to be gone for the weekend, then we'll say, hey, like this would be a great time to visit your parents, like hang out. But there have been, Noelle has wanted to stay here by herself. Like that has been a persistent goal that she wants to do. And then so we made a checklist. We made all the things we said, and her parents are very aware and they live in town. And so, but she's done that a couple of times, which is so cool that she's been able to kind of take that step, because obviously eventually if she moves out, even with a roommate, that may be something that she may have to navigate. So yeah, we're very early in the process. We opened in August. So that's probably why you haven't heard much about us. So.
And is it 8 people total, or 8 people and then plus the residents?
So it's 8 people total. So it's 4 college students, me, and 3 friend residents. Okay. So there's 2 on the guy's side, 1 on the girl's side. Yeah.
Do they get their own room?
Yeah, they do. So the friend residents get their own rooms, and then our college students share rooms. Okay. So yeah. And this is I should tell you that this is a model that has been replicated elsewhere. We replicated it from somewhere else. So at Duke, at Western Theological Seminary, some of those guys. If you look up Friendship House Partners, you'll be able to find where all the Friendship Houses are. They all kind of look different and have a different kind of audience that they cater to. So we're undergrads, but some of them do med students, some of them do seminarians, just kind of depends. So it's an interesting model, I think. So, yeah.
I would assume that most of them have a waiver.
Actually, believe it or not, most of them did not.
Do they now?
We're working on it. I was like, you're not on the waiver. What? Yeah. So yes, one of our friend residents just received the waiver, and one of them is working on it, and one of them was already on it. So yeah, which is interesting.
Because your college students could be paid staff for them.
They could, yeah. So
that changes your dynamic then.
Yeah, that changes the dynamic. It changes the roommate dynamic, which we really want to keep that. We think that's valuable, that they know that they're not here. They're not paid to be here. I think that's important. So, yeah.
It's cool. And I love the fact that this is something that has been replicated, will continue to be replicated. I think in ministry, one of the phrases that we hear often is that healthy things grow. And I'm curious, Jess, do you have plans to, duplicate what you're doing with your current kind of 8-person house? Because I know every community has more than 4 spots that need to be filled for people in that residential conversation.
Yeah, the need is huge, obviously. And with our residents being here for a longer period of time, it changes. Like, obviously, like once we're full for a while. So we're praying about that. Obviously, we just started in August. And one of the first steps is we're currently renting our house because we had to, it was a short process to launch this shindig. But we're pondering buying this house, and then seeing what other options may open in this neighborhood. Because what we found is we really love this neighborhood, and that this is not just a Friendship House thing, but this is a 18th Street thing. Like that, we want to plant roots here. And as much as we like, I would be really sad if we decided to move elsewhere. To build or whatever. I think there's value in being in this place. And our residents have been serving our neighbors. And so we have friends here now. So it's been really cool.
That is really cool. That is really cool. Other questions that you might have for Jess, as she's been talking about unique ways that she has connected in community. As you're thinking about that, in a minute, we're going to transition to just opening up this forum for everyone to talk about unique ways that maybe you have connected in community, because I think God's writing the story in all of us and in all of our communities if we're willing to listen and then act on those. So other questions that you might have specific for Jess about Friendship House or about any other unique ways that she has connected in community.
So I don't have a question, but I just have to say thank you for sharing with us. That was seriously a very beautiful story. Just hearing your heart and for just what's going on in the community, and just hearing you talk about how like you love the street and it's become like a thing, like you love the neighborhood. It's beautiful. So thank you. And I glanced through the listening guide while you were talking to. That's amazing. I've been trying to figure out ways to expand things here at Traders Point. We're basically just in kids, but I want to expand to adults, and that's a amazing first step. So I'm so excited that I spent my hour here today. So
awesome. Yeah. And can I tell you, like, I had really no friends with disabilities before one of my students walked into the doors of my student ministry. And so, like, I was probably one of those people that you're talking about in your congregation who probably wouldn't have bought in, but we know how they kind of wreck our lives in the best possible way. And so I just want to cheer you guys on I know that you guys are doing incredible work wherever you're at. So I'm encouraged by you all too, being here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such a key point, Jess. And for those people that will be watching this later after we post this, it can be intimidating. You know, the thought of jumping into disability ministry, if you're coming in from the outside, you don't have any experience with it, but and just take that first step, you know, create those friendships, and it will wreck you in the best of ways. Wendy, you mentioned the listening guide, and that's something that is available to grab and download. There are great questions to ask and in the process of listening to your community. And Jess has made that available to us, and we have that available for download. So you can jump on that link or check our website for that, as we'll have that posted. Okay. You can still ask questions for Jess if you have one that comes to mind. But with the last couple of minutes that we have left, I would just like to open it up as a forum for all of us. If you would like to share a unique experience on how you have connected in community, in your community, because we all kind of live in different communities and represent different ministries. Talk to us maybe about a unique thing that you have done. Not all of us have done friendship houses, and that's an awesome thing. But God's at work doing different things in our community. I'd love to hear some other ideas of how you have connected in community and how that's worked well for you. As you're thinking about how you're connected in community, or how God's convicting you to get outside the doors of your church and connect in your community right now, Mary's going to share. All right.
I just thought I'd share one thing that's been an easy entrance into the community for us has been Special Olympics. Having Special Olympics teams, some easy ones like bowling, some basketball. You know, we have the facilities to have practices on our campus and then to go and do that. Most of our teams are made up of about half and half church members and then outside people. And so it's given us a great way to connect with them deeply, and then also go out to the community and interact during the games and stuff. And given some of our congregation a chance to cheer on our people who are involved in the ministry. Then we also do a young athletes program for ages 2 to 7, which has been a good way to have just little activities there at the church that parents can bring their younger children to. And that goes out. The school system isn't even afraid to promote it usually for us, to say, hey, this is a good opportunity for kids. And because we're partnering with Special Olympics, that's an easy way to get out into the community that sometimes they would shut down because isn't a Southeast thing. That's been a good experience for us to meet more families and get outside our walls.
Yeah, I love that. And, the great thing about that is you as a church ministry don't have to replicate and do everything. You know, if things are happening in your community, go and engage in that. You know, whether it's Special Olympics, whether it's Challenger Baseball, whether it's a Miracle League, whether it's any type of sports league. Special needs cheerleading is a thing around here, which is really cool. So, dance, wherever it's at is where you should be. And I love that. And you don't have to feel the pressure of doing it inside your church walls through the ministry of your church, because you are the church. Go and be. And that can be a very powerful and beautiful thing. So other ideas of ways that you have connected in community, we're going to hang on until we get at least one more example. Thank you, Mary, for that.
I have one.
All right. Thanks, Wendy.
I didn't think of it which is really cool. I actually didn't start it. It was other ministries in the church that did it. So we have an indoor park here, which is literally like, Chick-fil-A on steroids. It's like 4 levels high. We have like 2 basketball hoops they can shoot at. We have a special needs section of the park as well. But something that it was actually just a member of our safety team. And the lady who runs the park were like, hey, how can we get more kids with special needs to come into the park? Because we do have a lot of like physical therapy sessions that will take place in there and things like that. So what they came up with is we close the park to the public the first Friday of every month, and it's open to anyone in the special needs community to come in. So schools can come. They have to register so that because we want to make sure we don't, overcrowd it and things like that. But schools can come and bring their, their classrooms and things like that. Families can just register to come, because we know some of our kids, they just, when it's full, it's not a fun place for them to be because it's loud. There's just a lot of people there. So I love that we've been able to do that. It took a long time to catch some traction, and it did. And then, COVID, as we've already mentioned before. And so hopefully that'll get back on track. But that was I loved that. I just randomly heard about it, that other people on our staff and in our church were thinking about how to reach out to this community, that I didn't necessarily have to be the one that did that.
That's a great idea. And that's something that we've done at First Christian as well. Is we have an indoor playland, and the way we designed it was it's in 4 levels too. The bottom level is over 75% accessible to someone in a wheelchair. And what we did is we connected with some different special education departments and made it available for field trips. So again, it's not a whole lot that you have to do other than just make the space available. We would treat people to lunch. We would feed them lunch as part of a field trip, because it's a great opportunity to use your space and engage in your community. Christy, you were going to jump in too.
Oh, Wendy, I was just going to say, I'm in several parents of special needs children's group. And I don't think you were on when I had said it, but I have a child with special needs as well. And that playground is talked about all over the pages. So you've done a good thing.
That was our intent. I came on staff 7 years ago, right when we were designing it. And I was so thankful that I did, because I was able to speak into some things and make sure we had things that were really important for our kids in there. So I'm really glad. Thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
Cool. That's cool. Well, we're about up against it time-wise. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in as we've been talking about connecting your disability ministry to your disability community. One of the best takeaways that I think I have from Jess today is the fact that if we're willing to walk outside the doors of our church, simply ask questions and listen, God will open doors and opportunities for us to step through that we could never have dreamed of. So I would just encourage you, ask questions. If you're not sure what questions to ask, jump on the links that we've provided to grab Jess's listening guide and try that out in your community. See what God will do. I'm sure that you'll be amazed by that. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. We'll be back in 2 weeks as we do this every Thursday during the noon Eastern hour. Next time that we come back, we're going to be talking about another great topic that a lot of churches aren't addressing right now, and that's the issue of employment and how the church can be involved in the issue of employment for adults with intellectual developmental disabilities. We are going to have as a special guest Michelle Smither from Dutton Farm in Rochester, Michigan. So if you're interested to find out more about their ministry, you can go to duttonfarm.org and find out a little bit more about them. But we're excited to talk about employment next month. Thank you again, Jess, for joining us and helping us lead this conversation. We look forward to seeing you all in about 2 weeks. Everybody have a great day. Enjoy that good weather. See you.